So basically, the first time I did this install, I had quite a few issues because I did it the Evan Fusco method that you can find on Prius Chat, where you actually take one of the connector pins in the headlight flasher connector and insert that into the hyper control ECU connector, and that does not work at all. And this is just a quick video to show kind of what happened and the issues I had with that, and also how to deal with other problems that may occur, like a pin that you need to remove getting stuck in the hyper control ECU connector or something like that. So this is just a quick compilation of some things that happened during my first install and all the things that went wrong because I tried to do it the Evan Fusco way. So this is just a quick video to go across some explanations for that. Well, I actually just broke the wire trying to push this in. So I will have to come back to this and redo this. So this pin is actually just as long as the connector. So it's a different pin. I thought it was the exact same type of pin, but it's not. So the reason I broke the first one and the second one here is because I was trying to force it in farther when it wouldn't go any farther. Because it's a different pin. I expected this to seat farther in there, but it won't because it's actually a different length pin. So we are going to have to remove this pin and then resolder the wire again, and that's why it broke. Is because I thought this pin was the same length as the other ones, but it's not. So this will not go all the way in to the same depth as the other ones, and you will also have to leave this white block unseated. So alright, so I really struggled to get the broken pin out. I was trying to find something to use that would fit in the hole here, and I eventually ended up using a 0.7 millimeter of a hex wrench, smallest size here. It fits in the hole, and I couldn't get enough grip on it with my hand to push it out, but I was able to, using this pliers here, I was able to grip on it hard enough and push it out. So in case this happens to you, you do break it or something does go wrong, there is a way to get it out. I was really worried. I spent probably about an hour trying to get this out. I went to the hardware store looking for a micro wrench at first, but then I remembered I had these hex key wrenches, and I couldn't remember how small they were, but the 0.7 millimeter is small enough. So that is the size you need to fit in the pinholes here in case you get the terminal pin stuck. Seat it into the hyper control ECU connector, and if you need to get this pin out for some reason after you installed it, what you'll have to do is you'll have to go into that even smaller hole above the connector hole where you see the barb. You need to push on that barb at the same time as you push inside the hole. So that is how you will get the terminal out. You have to push in that little tiny hole right up there up top above the bigger square hole, and push in at the same time with two small automotive terminal removers, or a really small flathead screwdriver or something. You'll take your tip here on the little hole up here as well as on the bigger hole beneath it, and then you'll push them out. You kind of just got to push down to unseat the barb, and then you'll push out the terminal pin. But this one looks good in here. It looks like it's right. You can see the barb. You can see the barb and the connector terminal itself in the connector. It's not perfect compared to the other ones, but it's in there good enough, and that should work. I would not recommend using the headlight connector pins and putting them into the hyper control ECU, because you can see here they're different lengths. You can see that they're different lengths here, and the worst part is that the ends of that first ridge there, going to where the wire seats in, right there, they're longer. And what happens in the connector is the white piece snaps down there, and it prevents the pin from being pulled out. It holds the pin secure in place. So because the barrel ends there are too long, it doesn't allow the hybrid ECU connector to close properly and probably not seat properly back into the hybrid control ECU either. I'll show that in a bit. But now there's two safety mechanisms here. There's also the barbed tip here, which kind of seats in here as well. And then the white locking tab there that keeps the pin from being pulled out and pushed down. And the problem is with the Evan Fusco method, as I showed earlier, that pin is too long, so it sits back here like this, and you can't push this white tab down here. He somehow got the Prius back into the hybrid control ECU connector like this, and I don't know how, because this tab needs to be flat for it to sit into those two plastic tabs there. If it's not flat, then those two plastic tabs there, the connector won't slide in properly because it slides in along here. So I'll show you what I mean when I pop the tab. You can also see how, since the white tab is up, it will not seat nicely into the plastic tabs there in the hybrid control ECU when they're up. So I don't know how Evan Fusco got his connector back together, but he somehow forced it in and it worked out for him. But I would not recommend doing it his way. Now, if you have seen the Evan Fusco method, or if you've seen the Evan Fusco method, which is how I originally did this the first time in my Prius, he had you solder this connector on, or he had, in the Evan Fusco method, he had you solder this pin onto the hybrid control ECU side of the wire as well, and inserting this pin into the connector here. But you can see is this pin is a different length than the others. This pin is a different length than the others in the connector. So it doesn't fit properly, and I actually damaged my other connector in my Prius pretty badly before I figured out that this pin for the hybrid control ECU connector was not the correct size. Evan Fusco made no mention of that in his post and his tutorial about how to do this, and I was trying to get this pin to seat in here correctly, but it's too big, so the tab doesn't lock right and the connector doesn't lock right, and I actually broke two of these pins trying to get them into the connector. But and Evan Fusco made no mention of any of this, that this was not the right size and that it could possibly result in disaster. It still somehow worked for him in the end, but I do not do it the Evan Fusco method way of putting this pin into the connector here, because it is not the right size. What I ended up doing was I ordered a similar size of pin that is in the connector already. You can kind of see him here if you look at him. I ordered the correct size pin. It's not the exact same pin, but it's close enough to where it works well.